Hello and welcome to a very special video. Today we're going to be painting the Marauder 2C, the clan improvement upon the Marauder, the venerable and much loved unit. This will be the final clan coyote colored mech I'm going to be painting, and then I'll be moving on to some others, but this is a fantastic suit. It was really fun to paint, and honestly, I've always loved my officer Marauders, and you know what, this is a fun one. And we'll get in there and I'll throw some tips out as best I can. So let's get to it. Okay guys, from a Stylo-Res black primer, we're going to take some of this deep gray and we're going to sponge that on. Now, I soaked this, squeezed the excess water out, and I use sponging to add a little bit of detail and get a base coat down fairly quick. If you're new to Battletech miniatures, they're slightly larger than their Warhammer in comparison to Warhammer at least, but I do like the texture. I think it's a good way to get it, and plus because there's so many little recesses on it, it's a good way to leave those or to put as little paint into them. So I don't put a lot of pressure on it and I just get it done, especially with these Battletech ones, and we'll get right back with that. Okay guys, so this is what the model looks like, and it's looking pretty decent for what we got. And if you're having trouble with some of those hard to reach areas with these makeup sponges, just cut you off a smaller section and you can use it to get in there without too much trouble. It'll still leave some areas that if you're worried about them, get them with a brush. So we're going to be hitting up those arms with some of this hard suit blue, which is a more bluey gray than some of the other ones. I like it for trying to do this Omicron color scheme for Clan Coyote. And this would be our last little bit of sponging. I like it because it gives a bit of a worn aesthetic when we get to the later sections when we dry brush it. But don't worry too much, but we're going to try to just get that all the way on. Just don't put a huge amount of pressure on it because you don't want to squeeze it out. You want it to dab onto it. And you want as much control as possible. So if you don't have an air gun, this is a real good way to get some of those effects. And I quite like it for what it is. Alright, so this is what it looks like with that blue. It's a little not perfect, but that's how I want it to look, like I got sprayed on at a motor pool. But I'm not super happy with this experiment I did on top, but we'll worry about that later. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to hit a few spots that are going to be mechanical later. And I'll be using a slightly different dark blackish gray. It's called Mantis Gray. It's got a little bit more of a different quality than the deep gray, and we're just doing this more as a cleanup phase. Now, don't be too afraid about coming in and doing a little bit of cleanup if you got a little too exuberant during your paint job. This is a normal phase for everybody, so we're just going to hit up all of those spots to make sure that they're taken care of, and the reason I'm doing it is in case anything slips through, I can be as shading or whatnot as my cats decide to host a rebellion next door. So we're just going to hit up all those spots. It's not going to be a massive departure, and we are going to paint over some of it. But we're just trying to get a little bit of differential in case, we don't do what we're expecting to. So just hit those parts up, and we'll be back. So we're going to take some spaceship exterior. Now the other option you can go with is Sky Gray, I believe, from Vallejo, and there's a bunch of other ones. A really good one if you want something that's very strong and you don't really have to worry too much about it being going over something darker is Titanium White, I believe, from Monument Hobbies. I heard is very, very good. I haven't tested it myself, but that's one I've heard that's very good. So we're going to drop it into these areas with weapons because we're going to use some contrast in them. It's my preferred method to get a very quick kind of, ooh, this is an energy weapon. And we also put it on the cockpit because I use contrast for these areas, and then I dry brush over them, and I find that they do a very, very good job at it. Now, we're going to add a couple small areas of detail to break up the model and the colors. So we're going to add a stripe on this side of the mech, and then, of course, on the other side opposing it. to give it a little bit of visual interest. Again, you're going to be looking at these guys from a couple feet away because you're going to be standing at a table more than likely. So we want them to have some interest. We'll probably add a few more markings from there and see what we like, see what we don't. So on the legs, I noticed that they're very, very monocolor right now. So we're going to hit these little armor spots up here. Now, it might take 2 coats of a paint like this to get a good even coating. Don't worry too much. Now, if you want it to look a little bit worn, you could take a bit of old sponge and just dab a little bit of the deep gray over it, and it'd be fine. So we're going to do that, and we'll be right back. Alright guys, so we got those markings put in. You can see the weapons in the cockpit are pretty good. The little armor on the side of the legs fine. And we did add some other markings besides that. Now the markings are perfect, but we got those ones done. We got this little 11 here, and we added these teeth kind of items on either side. And we filled in that blue with some deep gray and this I don't know, angry eyebrows icon that I don't know what I was doing, and I just went, looks good. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in some metallics. Now, I generally use metallics to break up the color a little bit more, and it's probably not the best term to use, but to also give the thing a little bit more life. So we're going to hit up these connector bolts on the leg, and we'll be getting the ones on the arm where the weapons are. And let's see, we're going to hit up this little, I think it's a cooling vent, but I'm not sure what it is on the Marauder here. We're going to hit that up so when people are looking at it, that's what they see. And we're going to just hit up as many of those elements we feel is appropriate, and we'll be right back. So we got all the metallics in. You can see them. They look pretty good. There's a little bit of messiness, but we'll be cleaning that up at a later point. But now let's face up with these weapons. Now I'm going to use some red on the ones underneath the cockpit. That's going to be Seraph red. We're going to use some, plasma bolt on the bigger ones. And the underneath will probably, we'll be throwing the red or the orange. Who knows? But we're going to just throw that in there. Now I do this because it's a very easy method. It doesn't take a huge amount of skill to do, and honestly, it does a fairly decent job. You can come back and jewel over this, but you could also use a metallic, especially on the cockpit. But this is the technique I go with. It's fairly easy, and I tend to work over it anyways. So, it's not exactly the greatest, but it will get things done fairly quick. Now, one thing I'll say is the plasma bolt here, or plasma, whatever, is a 1.0, so adding a little bit of varnish could help it. I did have a tiny bit of trouble with it, but we're going to get those hit up, and in there you can see it's a little weak when I first put it in. We will be doing cleanup, so don't worry there. And we're just going to get that into both of them. You see I got a little bit in one I don't want it. Once I get my brush cleaned up, I'm just going to dab that out, and we'll proceed back on the rest of it. So we're going to do that and be right back. Now we're going to come to doing the dry brushing. You can see that the effects are mostly dry. I waited till they dried with the contrast. They're not perfect, but that's not the point of them. So we're going to be using this makeup brush. I don't know what kind it is. It's just one I had given to me. So hey, there we go. So I'm going to basically brush it off on the back of my hand and a little bit of my finger here. And we're going to check on the base and go, still a little too much. We don't want to flood out and ruin the paint job. All we want is a nice worn aesthetic. Now, because mechs are basically just hard lines and various hard shapes, it's very easy to do this and get a fairly decent highlighting job. Now, when I don't want it to look like it's been worn and battered and, just kind of in the field, this is not what I do, but we're going to do this all the way around, and we'll be right back. So we got the base hit up with some watered down wasteland brown, I believe. He didn't want me to do any flocking over it. He wanted it to look a little bit more barren, so we're going to let that dry. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to come in and hitting up the miniature with some of my own mix. And this is Skaven Grime mixed with some Reikland Flesh Shade, a little bit of Known Oil, and a lot of contrast media. And then it creates this kind of grayish brown, which is, once it dries, gives it kind of a greasy slash oily slash grimy appearance. It tinge it slightly with that kind of golden-ish brown, which you'll see on a lot of used machinery. Now, it's a very thin mix, and if you get a lot that tends to kind of pool in one thing, what we're going to do is we're just going to take some of that, get it on the brush, and we're going to move it over to another spot that needs it. And again, it's going to be a very easy thing to work with, and I like the effect it does. We're also going to end up pin washing a lot of those recesses, which are all over the mech. So it'll be a interesting look, but it does help give it a kind of earthy look without your eyes really realizing why. So you make sure you hit up all of the metallics with whatever shade you're doing, and of course take your time, don't get too crazy. Now if you do what I do and you mix it with contrast to make it very easy to run and work with, it'll be a lot easier with the flow properties, and you can do a little bit of cleanup, but I like it because it makes it look like in some of the areas where it dries, like it's excess grime that's kind of built up or caked up in areas. But generally, I get a very clean result, and we'll be right back with that. Alright everybody, so here's our final product. You can see it looks a little bit weathered and battered, but that's the way the owner wanted it to look, and that's the way we're going to have it. But I think that shade added a little bit of a grimy feeling while reestablishing those lines, making the metallics look a little bit more like you would expect. And in general, I just think it looks good. Is it a competition level? No. But what I wanted to do was encourage people to try things. Try things that are small, like the geographic shapes like I used for the little teeth on the side, or just even adding a few straight lines just to break up flat patterns. The idea is just try things, and if you fail, that's not a really big deal. It's a learning experience, and that's the only way you're going to learn. And as long as you're happy with it, that's all that counts, unless you're in like a competition. But you can't get to a competition unless you learn, and you can't learn unless you fail. So until next time, guys, have a wonderful day, and remember, power up, pilots.